Tonight, standing by.
About 3 hours and 19 minutes later.
To stand by.
I had already had guardsmen on buses at the armory.
More testimony today over the deadly delay during the January riot breaching the Capitol. Plus,
rolling back restrictions.
To open Texas 100%.
Texas set for 100% reopening, and other states are joining in.
Now more than ever, we must do all we can to stop the spread of the virus.
Amid a Biden administration warning to stay vigilant. And
retaliation and at least one dead after rockets strike the same Iraqi military base hit by Iran last year. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
A potential repeat of the January 6th insurrection. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jenna Browder.
And good evening. I'm John Jessup. The FBI warning tonight of extremist chatter about a possible attack on the U.S. Capitol tomorrow.
This as lawmakers held a hearing today in their continuing probe into what went wrong in the siege 2 months ago. CBN national security correspondent Eric Phillips begins our coverage tonight. Eric?
John, Jenna, lawmakers continue to dissect January 6th from all angles, with today's focus on why it took so long for National Guard troops to respond after receiving the urgent call for help.
At 1:49 p.m., I received a frantic call from then Chief of United States Capitol Police Stephen Son, where he informed me that the security perimeter of the United States Capitol had been breached by hostile rioters. Chief Son, his voice cracking with emotion, indicated that there was a dire emergency at the Capitol, and he requested the immediate assistance of as many available National Guardsmen that I could muster. The approval for Chief Son's request would eventually come from the Acting Secretary of Defense and be relayed to me by Army senior leaders at 5:08 p.m., about 3 hours and 19 minutes later.
Major General Walker pointed the finger at then Acting Secretary of Defense Chris Miller, who required more clearance than usual to deploy National Guard troops for civil unrest. On January 6th, Guard troops were assigned to help D.C. police with traffic control.
What I wanted to do was take those guardsmen and move them to the Capitol immediately.
What happened instead, according to Walker, turned into a high-level discussion about the optics of guardsmen at the Capitol.
The Army senior leaders did not think that it looked good, it would be a good optic. They further stated that it could incite the crowd. I was frustrated. I was just as stunned as everybody else on the call.
Especially since, he testified, it was very different from last summer during the aftermath of George Floyd's killing, when the Guard approval process happened much faster.
General Walker, was the issue of optics ever brought up by Army leadership when the D.C. National Guard was deployed during the summer of 2020? Was that discussed?
It was never discussed the week of June. It was never discussed July 4th when we were supporting the city. It was never discussed August 28th when we supported the city.
Secretary Miller wanted to make the decisions of how the National Guard was going to be employed on that day.
FBI and DHS officials were directly asked if January 6th was an intelligence failure.
On January 6th, I don't feel I'm empowered or have enough information to declare whether or not this is an intelligence failure. I do know, however, it was not a success, and we will do everything we can to make.
Both the DHS and FBI put out an alert about possible trouble at the Capitol tomorrow, and U.S. Capitol Police are beefing up, much of it because of a conspiracy theory that predicts former President Donald Trump will rise to power on tomorrow, which is March 4th, the day that presidential inaugurations used to happen prior to 1933. John and Jenna.
All right, Eric Phillips, thank you very much. In a major concession tonight, President Biden and congressional Democrats agreed to tighten income limits for stimulus checks as party leaders prepare to move the coronavirus relief bill through the Senate.
And Jenna, it's not just COVID checks getting scaled back. The latest development comes as a number of states roll back pandemic restrictions like mask mandates and as the president moves up the timeline for vaccinating all adult Americans.
And senior Washington correspondent Tara Merchiner has the story. Tara, there are a lot of moving parts right now.
That's right, John and Jenna. And the race to vaccinate Americans is picking up pace now, with nearly a dozen states ready to ease restrictions. But health officials say it is too early to let our guards down.
Despite warnings from political and health officials, several states are moving to open their doors.
It is now time to open Texas 100%.
Governor Greg Abbott ending the Lone Star State's mask mandate and letting businesses fully reopen next week. Mississippi is following suit on masks, while Michigan restaurants and businesses can allow more customers indoors. The state also easing nursing home restrictions. The president, though, thinks it's too early.
Now's not the time to let up. I've asked the country to wear masks for my first 100 days in office. Now's not the time to let our guard down.
He prefers more Americans take the vaccine, and soon.
This country will have enough vaccine supply, I'll say it again, for every adult in America by the end of May.
That timeline jump courtesy of using the Defense Production Act and an unlikely partnership between rivals, Johnson & Johnson and Merck, in order to produce more vaccines quicker.
It's going to add considerably to our capabilities, both near and in the long term.
So far, the CDC reports 50 million Americans, or about 20% of the U.S. population, have received at least one shot.
I just felt like this is what I had to do.
Still, the daily COVID case average jumping almost 3.5% from a week ago.
I remain deeply concerned about a potential shift in the trajectory of the pandemic.
Still, the president now pushing to reopen schools and announcing pre-K through 12 teachers, staff, and child care workers will be prioritized. The First Lady, a teacher herself, joining new Education Secretary Miguel Cardona in visiting schools in Connecticut and Pennsylvania.
We've seen the impact on kids being doing Zoom from their kitchen tables and kitchen counters, and everybody wants, the president wants kids to be back in school.
And the CDC also expected this week to give the green light for fully vaccinated people to have small gatherings in their home with other fully vaccinated people. They are also asking everyone, vaccinated or not, to continue wearing masks and social distance. John and Jenna.
All right, Tara Mergener, thank you very much, Tara. Well, a little over a month in office, and President Biden's cabinet sits half empty. The stalled confirmations on full display today as senators deadlocked on one top post, and after another nominee bowed out. In a 14-14 party line vote, Biden's pick for Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra barely advanced to a full vote in the Senate. Pro-life opponents say reject Becerra's nomination over his strong abortion stance. One called him a pro-abortion activist. The split follows Neera Tanden's withdrawal to head the Office of Management and Budget, her nomination failing due to a history of harsh partisan attacks on both Republicans and Democrats. West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin opposed Tanden, and no Republicans supported her, all but sinking her confirmation bid.
Well, New York's embattled governor tonight, saying he will not resign under growing sexual harassment claims. Governor Andrew Cuomo addressed the allegations today, taking questions directly from reporters at a press conference in Albany.
I now understand that I acted in a way that made people feel uncomfortable. It was unintentional, and I truly and deeply apologize for it. I feel awful about it, and frankly, I am embarrassed by it. And that's not easy to say, but that's the truth.
The governor says he will fully cooperate with the state attorney general's independent review.
Tonight, a U.S. contractor is dead after suffering a heart attack during an overnight attack that sent at least 10 rockets into an Iraqi military base hosting U.S. troops in the western Anbar province. It's the same base hit by Iran in January 2020 after the U.S. strike taking out Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. Iraqi military sources say today's attack did not do significant damage and no initial reports of injuries or deaths. Some suspect Iranian-backed militias launched this attack, retaliating after U.S. warplanes hit similar groups in eastern Syria last week. Middle East experts say these militias are an extension of Iran's military.
They're a state within a state. They have their own finances and checkpoints. They terrorize people. They fire rockets. They have drones. They have missiles.
And the attacks come just 2 days before Pope Francis is scheduled to visit Iraq. And here with us now, Ben Talablu, Senior Fellow with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Ben, it's great to have you with us this evening. First question, this attack does seem to be a direct retaliation by Iranian-backed forces against President Biden's airstrike in Syria last week. Is the U.S., Ben, going to be forced to further escalate the back and forth here?
Well, great to be with you. In short, the answer is yes and no. In some ways, it's a retaliation to the U.S. strikes, which we have to admit were limited and intentionally designed to be not on Iraqi territory. If you recall, those airstrikes were on Syrian territory, bases, installations that were linked to the group that struck the U.S. positions in Iraq just over 2.5 weeks ago. But in some ways, no, because these militias, these Shiite militia groups, which retain strong ties politically, militarily to the Islamic Republic of Iran and its Quds Force, have been doing this for a while now. There have been, including today's attack, 84 such indirect fire attacks, basically counting mortars and rockets, fired at U.S. positions in Iraq since May 2019. This is part of a larger trend of Iran-backed escalation designed to bait, bleed, and kill Americans, force the U.S. out of the region, and ensure the heartland of the Middle East, Iraq and Syria, is ripe for Iranian dominance.
Benham, how does this complicate plans for Iran and the United States to jumpstart those negotiations to re-enter the nuclear deal?
Well, fundamentally, I don't think it does. And if anything, if executed properly, if the U.S. responds proportionally or in kind or replicates the similar type of thinking behind its recent retaliation or its recent self-defense move to previous rocket attacks, then it can actually bolster diplomacy, because the Iranians would see that the U.S. is resolute on a whole host of fronts and is not just myopically or narrowly focusing on the nuclear issue. It seems to be, or would seem to be, committed to rolling back Iranian bad behavior wherever that behavior is, be it at the negotiating table or on the battlefield.
Ben, let me ask you this. So the Jerusalem Post is reporting that there are informal talks about a possible security alliance between Israel, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and the UAE as a counter to Iran's regional influence. This is a very different Middle East than it was a little over 4 years ago when Biden was vice president under President Obama. Is this a dynamic that the Biden administration appears to understand? Your thoughts?
Well, one would certainly hope to understand that dynamic, because in the nomination hearings today, Wendy Sherman, who was instrumental in negotiating that 2015 Iran nuclear deal, and she's being put up now, I think, for the second most important position in the State Department, said exactly what you just said, which is something I've said as well, that the Middle East of today is not at all the Middle East of 2015 or 16. So many new regional dynamics have emerged, and one force bringing the Arab states of the Persian Gulf and the Israelis together is the outsized, looming conventional missile, military, and nuclear threat of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And let's hope that the Biden team is committed to working with our allies equally in the Middle East as they are in Asia and in Europe, because our allies in the Middle East understand this.
All right, Ben Talablu with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Ben, always great to have you.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you so much.
And coming up, hot off his speech at CPAC, the former Secretary of State tells all.
Having sex before you're married is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire, Monday night at 9:30. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Watch The Global Lane, Thursday night at 9:30.
Welcome back. Well, tonight in his first major speech, the nation's new Secretary of State warned against the erosion of democracy abroad and at home.
Disinformation is rampant here. Structural racism and inequality make life worse for millions. Our elected leaders were targeted in the violent siege of the Capitol just 2 months ago. And more broadly, Americans are increasingly polarized.
Secretary Antony Blinken says State Department officials have not always done a good job of connecting foreign policy to the needs of Americans and indicated a reversal on previous free trade agreements in order to focus on American workers and jobs.
Secretary Blinken's immediate predecessor there at State under President Trump is speaking out tonight.
Yeah, after his public appearance at CPAC, Mike Pompeo sat down with CBN News chief political analyst David Brody to talk Israel and Iran. Take a look.
Secretary Pompeo, I want to ask you about Israel for a moment. I have to tell you, I thought of you the other day when I saw that Biden had not called Netanyahu for, what was it, at least a month or so, more than a month? I'm not quite sure, but I thought of you thinking, what in the world would Mike Pompeo think of that? Specifically, what kind of message do you think that sent to Israel exactly?
We worked so hard and made such enormous progress building out a concept for peace in the Middle East. And that include our amazing friends in the Jewish homeland of Israel. I worked so closely with Prime Minister Netanyahu and his whole team, and we all did, to create what became the Abraham Accords. They were premised on a central understanding that Israel had a rightful place and that Israel had the responsibility and duty to protect its own people. Mm-hmm. And that if they did that, if we did that well, and we supported Gulf states in their efforts to take care of their own countries, and we pushed back against the central threat to Israel, which is in fact the Islamic Republic of Iran's regime. If we did those things, these countries would come together, and we saw that it was amazing. These Abraham Accords are historic. Yep. And I hope that they remain. I hope that the Biden administration can see that this is something that they should build on. There's more work to do, and it would be a great legacy for them if they could continue to grow peace and stability in the Middle East. Unfortunately, it appears they're going back to appeasing Iran as a central understanding in the Middle East.
Do you believe this Biden administration is in the appeasement business when it comes to dealing with Iran?
So far, they have taken a terrorist organization that is underwritten and sponsored by Iran, the Houthis that exist in Yemen, Iranian-backed, to be sure. No one disputes that they're terrorists. No one disputes that. And yet they de-designated them. We saw last week that they gave a wink and a nod to what appears to be enormous financial relief to the Iranian regime. We put massive pressure on the regime, and it looks like they're going to allow billions of dollars in wealth to go from South Korea and the IMF into Iran and essentially take a foot off the stranglehold that we had on the Iranian regime. This is not a good start. And when the administration said they wanted to go back into a conversation, into negotiations, the Iranians said, no, we're not ready to do that because they believe that if they resist, they can get yet more concession, more appeasement. I hope that's not the right direction. There are Americans held hostage. There's a missile program. Yeah. There's an active set of violations of the JCPOA that threaten the United States and Israel. We need to be strong, and when we're strong, the Iranians will respect that, and it will deter terror from that region.
Sounds like you're concerned about appeasement for sure.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, for sure.
Stick around, a profile of one of the frontline heroes fighting the COVID pandemic with a boat and a call from God.
Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new MyCBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new MyCBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow, connect, have fun. The all-new MyCBN app.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
Watch On the Home Front today at 2:30.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
It goes without saying, throughout this pandemic, frontline workers have been critical. We introduced you to one nurse last year who sailed from Virginia to help in hotspot New York.
And since then, Rachel Hartley has kept moving from hospital to hospital, all because she feels it's her calling from God. Here's CBN's Eric Phillips with an update.
Traveling nurses like Rachel Hartley get assignments where help is needed most. For nearly a year now, that has put her in contact with countless COVID-19 patients, literally from coast to coast.
Thinking back to last year in April when we set sail, having no idea we would still be doing this almost a year later. So, you know, the future's so unpredictable, but it's in the Lord's hands, and we're just happy to be following along.
Following God's leading has kept Rachel Hartley and her husband Taylor on the road and sometimes on the water. We first talked to her last year after she had taken her skills as an ICU nurse to NYU Langone Hospital in Brooklyn. Back then, she said it was a rude awakening.
Things, especially in the hospital, were just chaotic. There were so many patients, so many people dying, and it was just a really tough environment to walk into.
Thankfully, she says the grace of God allowed her to press on. After leaving New York, Rachel accepted assignments in Connecticut, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Toledo, Ohio, and now L.A.
The Lord definitely paved the way for us and has blessed us.
She says while compensated well, the mental and physical price is high. Both she and her husband came down with COVID while in Toledo. Even then, she believes God's hand was at work.
My symptoms really were just a minor headache and back pain for a day. And Taylor's symptoms then went away within 24 hours. I think the first is the sovereignty and the grace of God, protected me through everything. And, given that, I think PPE is so helpful.
After nearly a year and 5 assignments, the most difficult element still remains.
Overall, the hardest part is definitely the amount of deaths that I've seen. Coming to LA and seeing their surge and just being reminded of what happened in New York, and being like, oh, this is happening all over again. I can't believe it. But has caused me to grow so much, in my faith, in reliance on the Lord, and, through the grace of my husband as well.
Rachel says she knows it's been a difficult year for everyone and offers this word of encouragement from the front lines.
I encourage, people to really look back to the science of mask wearing and social distancing. And in one sense, don't go overboard either, because, we need to get outside and we need to get fresh air and exercise, and we need to be in community with people. And there's a way to do that safely.
Rachel plans to take only one more travel assignment after LA. Then she plans to pursue a job as a nurse practitioner, a degree she completed during this past busy year. While she has found her current work to be incredibly fulfilling, she and her husband hope to be a bit more settled by this time next year. Eric Phillips, CBN News.
Cool story. Thanks, Eric. And coming up, Dolly Parton gets the COVID-19 vaccine and sings its praises to the tune of Jolene.
Are you suffering from feeling tired or worn out during the day? Can you not turn off your brain at night? You are not alone. Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Bruce, the Sleep Doctor, and I've partnered with the Christian Broadcasting Network, and we're going to bring you some unbelievable information that you can use tonight to get a better night's rest.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Protect Your Sleep today.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30.
Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man coming.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Finally tonight, singing legend Dolly Parton now has her COVID shot.
That's right, Jenna. Now she's telling everyone to get theirs as well by retooling the lyrics to her famous song, Jolene.
I even changed one of my songs to fit the occasion. It goes, vaccine, 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 vaccine. I'm begging of you, please don't hesitate. Vaccine, 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 vaccine. 'Cause once you're dead, then that's a bit too late.
That song's going to be stuck in my head. Sounds good a cappella even. Parton said although she was being funny with her song, she was absolutely serious about encouraging people to get their shot, especially those who might be afraid, all to help the country get back to normal as soon as possible. Parton, you may recall, donated $1 million to Vanderbilt University Medical Center back in Nashville for coronavirus research. That Dolly Parton has a heart of gold.
She does. Who doesn't love Dolly Parton? And you know what's neat? She didn't advertise that she gave that money for this COVID research. It just was public records happened to come out. So wasn't seeking praise, just a great act of service.
A class act. Well, thank you for watching Faith Nation.
Have a great evening.